Troublesome times are here, filling men's hearts with fear. Freedom we all hold dear, now is that day. Humble your hearts to God, save from the chastening rod. Seek the way pilgrims trod, Christians away. My Jesus is coming soon, morning or night or noon. Many will meet their doom. Trumpets will sound, and all of the dead shall.
Thanks for joining us today. In the next few minutes, we're going to be working with a gentleman who is an expert in trying to educate you so that you can have a lot of money. This is going to be a good show. Our guest is Edward Burell, and this is Edward's first time to be here, and glad to have you here, Edward.
Thank you, Lionel, for having me.
You came highly recommended to me by a friend of yours named Pat Wagner.
Well, I know him very well. He baptized me, in fact.
Is that right? Well, Pat and you work together with some other folks at the Creve Hall Church of Christ, and you get a lot of people jobs.
We do.
And you are interested in helping people improve and helping people manage their money.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Tell us today, who is Edward Burell? So my audience doesn't know you. Give us some insight on who is Edward Burell.
Well, first of all, I'm a Christian. I'm a father, husband. I'm a military officer, spent many years in the military. I actually have flown in combat, so I've got a lot of various experiences. I lived in Europe. I lived in 12 states. I've been an executive in a large insurance company, small business owner now, and run my own business in partnership with my son.
And life has been good to you because you've made good decisions.
Yes, it has been very good to me.
Decision making is important, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Mamas, now listen to what we're saying. You got those young ones you're raising, and it's important as a parent to teach your children make good decisions, because bad decisions have bad consequences, and we see it all the time. We hear it on the evening news. It's important for people to make good decisions, and it starts in the home. You start training your children. Edward's got a book here we're going to try to get to about teaching children how to manage money. But first of all, when did you get interested in money and helping people get jobs? When did that light your passion?
Actually, when I was a lieutenant, lieutenants were responsible for the troops getting in financial difficulties, and the companies that they owed money to would write letters, and I would actually counsel the troops. And so in many cases they were taken advantage of, and it sort of got me up in the air, and I tried to start educating them about, you know, the perils of credit and all the shysters that are out there trying to take advantage of them. And
military personnel are often victims to those type of situations where they get themselves in trouble financially really quick.
They do. Oftentimes they've just left home, that they have the first paying job, and people target them and take advantage of them.
Because I remember when I was in that right outside the base,
yes,
wherever you was.
Still have that.
Right outside the base, man. That's where the snipers were.
Yes, they are. They're still there.
Everybody had a game going out there.
They did, yeah, unfortunately.
And, what did you find out? What is the most common mistake that a young person, we're talking 18, first job, first employee, what is the most common mistake? This may not be a fair question, but what is the most common mistake you find young people make?
They spend all their money, and they spend more than they make, and there are just actually industries out there targeting them to extend credit to them, so they actually can spend more than they actually make, and that doesn't work in the long run.
I had a situation where a child was on special needs, was on a Social Security check, had a disability, mental disability, and banks sent them credit cards, sent that child credit cards. It had a $1,000 limit on it, but they gave them a credit card. Well, when they got the credit card, they just thought, this is free money, you know, and then they come wanting to get that money back. And you know, that $1,000 grew into a lot of money really, really quick.
It does.
And so what you're saying is, for young people that really want to be in charge of their life, they got to be in charge of their money.
They do, and they need to learn how to spend their money efficiently.
Now, what do you mean when you say that?
And efficiently, well, I'll give you an example. You can buy a Coke in the Coke machine for $1, or you can buy it for 26 cents if you buy a 6-pack in the grocery store. So that's 75% or so more, and it's not 75 cents times one, it's 75 cents times a lifetime of transactions that are expensive. Or you can spend $5 to have tuna fish, gourmet tuna fish sandwiches, or you can spend $35 to $100 to on an expensive meal. And so there's a huge difference there. And it's your values that you place on, your money versus the spending it, what you're spending it on.
So you got to learn to count.
Then there's companies and industries out there taking advantage of people that are bad with math. So yeah, you do need to learn how to count.
And what are some of the guidelines you would tell? Now, you gave us an example there of a person, doing the math on buying the Coke versus buying a group of Cokes or a pack. What are some of what's the thought process that a person, when they approach and they're thirsty, they want to go get a Coke, what is the thought process that should happen in their mind? Because, see, I'm overweight. And I don't have a thought process. If I see it, I eat it, and I've tried to watch what I eat. But Edward, I'll have food halfway eaten before I realize I didn't need this. And that thought process fails me. So when it comes to spending money, I know people are impulsive. And advertising companies play to them, and so they're impulsive. Is there a thought process that you can train yourself before you spend any money?
Well, I have a pretty severe thought process, is that if I need to buy it, I'll think of it myself, so I'm not going to have someone spend it to me, and I'm going to avoid those going to the grocery store anywhere and exposing myself to food when I'm hungry, and little tricks like that. But basically, just knowing what the alternative is. You can spend your money or accumulate it, and you can have $500,000 nest egg when you're 50 on a modest income, or you can have $50,000 worth of credit card debt. It's really a choice, and you have to understand that you're making a choice every time you pull out your wallet.
A person on a modest income. Now, we're talking about, what is a modest income in your world?
Well, in the financial book that I wrote, I talk about it at $30,000, a family of four, and a lot of young people can make $30,000 and a lot more. Mm-hmm. And so it's a matter of identifying reasonable and rational ways to spend it. A $30,000 income does not buy a $54,000 pickup truck. I don't care how much of a Bubba you are. You just can't, it's not warranted to buy, so you buy.
Bubba can't afford it.
Bubba can't afford it. And they actually have $54,000 pickup trucks. I heard that one time and I didn't believe it. I looked it up and sure enough they do.
A pickup truck, $54,000.
Pickup truck, $54,000. So.
That's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money.
A lot of bread right there.
My first house was $13,700 in South Georgia, so it's a lot of money.
Now, impulse buying is what you are saying we limit ourselves to doing. The thought process is, I won't make a major decision if I'm going to make a major decision, I wait at least 2 to 3 days, sometimes 2 to 3 weeks before I'll buy anything. If I'm going to go out and buy a car, something like that's a major, it's going to cost a lot of money. I don't just see it and buy it. Before I decide I'm going to shop for a car, I spend time thinking and running all the avenues I can to keep from doing impulse buying. Because I walk in, they tell me, I bought a car one day and didn't have a dime in my pocket. My engine blew up in the car I was in. I walked in a dealership, they sold me a car. I didn't have but $12 in my pocket. And they sold me a car.
And probably gave you money, too.
They didn't give me any money that day, but they sold me a lemon and made it so easy, for me to drive out. And it was a good-looking car. But that can take people, and if I hadn't known how to manage my money properly, they would have taken many cleaners on that thing. I was able to go get my stuff together and get out from under that thing right, and not lose money on it. But what is... impulse buying's a thing. Seeing it and wanting it, and I got to have this right now, and jumping on it. That's a big mistake people make in it.
It is. It is. In fact, the children's book that I wrote regarding finance and credit.
Now, this is this one right here.
Right.
And what is this now?
It's called The Repossession of Riley the Puppy.
Hold that up right there for me, Edward.
It's called Repossession of Riley the Puppy.
Now, how does anybody get this book?
Well, it's available on Amazon or all the major bookstore sellers. It's available online, so they can get it.
Now, who's this written for?
This is it's written for young children, 6 to 9 if their parents read it to them, 9 to 12, depending on maturity by themselves.
And you'd recommend they read this for their children?
My goal is to teach children of the evils of credit, and I took a real crack at it in this book, and I think it does that. And actually, the repossession of Riley happened because the family bought the the puppy went on credit card and they couldn't pay for it, and the company came and took it back. And the kids actually witnessed that. So it was a traumatic experience for the kids, but it made an impression on them. So that was the goal of the book, to teach them that spending money on credit may not end well.
One of the great examples in teaching children to spend money properly is for parents to spend money properly, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah, parents. And the mother, I think there's the mother's knee issues. The mother has the most influence, in my opinion, on very young children, and what she does and what she says and how she acts, has a dramatic impact on the children.
I notice I've had some people on the program here that are from the cooking industry, and they talk about how you can fix a meal for, a couple of bucks and feed a family of 4 using rice and some things like that and have a great tasty meal. Or you can spend, $20, $30 and it's not any better.
True. In fact, one of the examples in the book is where the family went out regularly to their favorite restaurant, and the average ticket was about $39 or so. And in the book, the children actually suggested that they make tuna fish at home. The kids actually prepared it, which was an exciting, entertaining thing. And they spent $5.87 for tuna, and they pocketed the other $32 that they saved. That's a lot of money differential. I mean, if you look at the percentage-wise, it's huge.
And when you do it on a 7-day week,
exactly,
52 weeks a year.
And see, that's the insightful thing that people don't realize. It's not the 60 cents for the Coke or the $32 one time for the meal. It's you have hundreds of transactions in a year and thousands over a lifetime. That adds up to serious money.
I know a guy that's a millionaire. At least I assume he's a millionaire. He hasn't told me a millionaire, but he has been a salesman. And when he gets ready to go to lunch, he gets the advertisement papers, and whoever's running a special that day, hamburgers, whoever's running a special at a hamburger, he goes there and he does it. And his thought process is, don't spend unless just spend what I need to spend, not and that's bled over into his life and his sales and everything. And he is wealthy because he doesn't spend money. He loves the old saying I use all the time, my money looks better in my pocket than anybody else's.
You know what, the thing is, you asked it earlier, what to do in making choices and avoiding the spontaneous purchases and stuff, but when I was very young, I had one of the McDonald's type jobs starting out, and I didn't make any money, but even today, if you made $10,000, if you kept it all, you'd have $10,000. So I actually started out with a plan to not spend any money at all and only spend when I absolutely had to. So that meant, a 50-cent loaf of bread and a 70-cent pack of bologna. You can actually live on that. I mean, you can actually subsist on
good.
that. And it's well, mine weren't that good, but it was good when I got hungry enough.
It's good. Had it last night. I love it. That's the reason I weigh 300 pounds. But if a person can condition themselves, if they want to have something down the road, if you believe you're going to live till you're 50 years old and want to retire, is that what you said a while ago? If you can plan ahead, and you think God is in charge and life will be here when you're 50 years old and you don't want to work all your life, they need to start planning early.
They do.
And you train yourself early. Don't spend. Now, people are going to call you tight, but don't spend and save what you got and start saving early. Now, how do you save? How would you do that?
You really hit on the issue. I mean, people do think you're tight, and it's a matter of, I have a different view. I want to be careful on how I spend my money, and I want to get value for my money. So if I buy a prepared meal or go to a restaurant, I'm going to pay 2-3 times, maybe 10 times as much as I could if I just bought the simple basics and assembled it myself. So that's the way I do everything. If I'm going to have a big job done, like a roof on my house, I'm going to bid the job out. I'm going to learn what I'm buying, and I'm going to compare the bids, and I'm going to get the best job for the best money. So I think it's being thoughtful and do it intentionally. I spend my money intentionally. What am I buying and why, and is that worth it? And I make a judgment on that.
See, I think you said it there. A lot of us spend money haphazardly. We just spend it until it runs out. And I see so much I see this all the time. People that's on a fixed income, they're on government assistance, and they get their check by the 3rd, some the 15th, but they get their check, and 3 days after they get their check, they're back out of money, and they can live the rest of the month without having money because they're on rice and beans and doing things. They get by that period of time. If they would just live through the first of the month that way, I mean, you have to pay your rent, but if they would just train themselves to live through the first of the month that way and put that money back. Now, when you go put money back, how do you put money? How do you keep from getting conned where you put your money to work for you?
Well, I think when you're first starting out, it's just simply in the bank. I mean, you're going to have to put it in the bank and draw whatever interest they pay. As you accumulate money, there are many other options. I happen to be a real estate investor, but I know it, and I recommend you invest in what you know. So if you
don't do anything blindly, do you?
No, I don't. If I'm a car mechanic, I'm gonna buy a car and tinker with it and sell cars, or sell my services after my full-time job. But I suggest people stay with what they know and where they can bring value to the marketplace and make money.
If you go and you get your money and you put it in the bank, and where I've had some success was a certain percent of my check goes in a savings account, and I don't take it out of savings. I don't care what happens. It don't come out of savings. It goes in there and stays in there, and just forget about it. It just goes and you forget about it, and it goes in savings and stays in savings. And I know people that do that, and over a period of time, 10 years gets by real quick, and it starts accumulating. And then when they take that to the right people, they can turn that into some money.
But more importantly, when you're starting out and you don't have any money in the bank, and you have life's emergencies, like your car breaks down, or you have any number of you run out of food and you got to go borrow money at high rates. I mean, just having a buffer, that even if it didn't earn a dime in the bank, just having that $500 or $1,000 to fall back on, so you don't get clipped fees and transaction costs and all these scammers that are out there just trying to take advantage of you when you're in a tight situation money-wise. That's going to accumulate to be a lot of money and just saved money. So you don't get bamboozled every time you turn around.
Car titles. That's a good example of what not to do.
In many cases, those title loans and so forth are extremely high. In some cases, it's justified because they have a lot of people don't pay them back and so forth. So yeah, you want to stay away from it. And I'm not condemning them per se. I just don't want you to spend more than you have to. And I want you to know that, and I want you to save your money and bail yourself out so you don't get clipped all those extra fees.
Now, when you talk about these extra fees. What does tell us about extra fees? What are the extra fees? I got a mother lives out here, and she's raising 3 or 4 children, and she doesn't have a good place to shop, and life is tough. She has ride MTA when she goes grocery shopping, and so to go out and get out of the food desert and get out to where there's a grocery store. What are some of the things that she can do in planning and managing her amount of money?
I think the first thing for at the very basic level is controlling the cost of your food. I think that's the number one thing. And so it turns out you can make a lot of money by doing that. And she just has to experiment and with the basic food items that she can cook. I mean, I can make French fries pretty good, and I can't cook at all, but I can slice up a home fries and make French fries, and for I can do it for probably 10 cents. It cost me $1.79 at McDonald's. So that's a huge difference. And when you're at the very basic level,
and let me stress this again. Now that's a huge difference over 50 years.
Yes.
There's the key.
Yes, and in my financial book, I prove it to be around $550,000 for a 21-year-old reaching age 55, making 30 grand a year. It can actually, those efficiencies, you have to employ efficient spending methods and good choices to accumulate money, and this is what we're talking about, spending 12 cents for French fries versus $1.79, and by the time you add that up over a lifetime, you're talking about huge amounts of money.
And you do that on every item.
On every item, that's right.
And that's what people who are driven by impulse.
Well, and someone making, $15,000 a year getting a government check, for example, can spend 25% of their income just going to fast food 3 times a week.
Yes.
That's a lot of disposable income to spend
It is.
for a fast food choice, and they don't know it. And that's
And it's not good
I'm trying to make the point. You got to realize what you're doing to yourself.
You have to be in charge. Your brain has to work for you.
Yes.
And people who are not good at taking responsibility on themselves and making responsible decisions, they're going to lose money.
They are.
They're going to be conned by everybody that comes along.
Absolutely.
And other people's going to have your money. They're going to take your money and they're going to run with it and they're going to enjoy it. They'll be going to Florida on vacation and you will be sitting at home crying about not having anything.
Yes, and the cupboard's bare too, so.
Things like vacations. For a family that wants to go on vacation, how would you recommend they go about doing something like that? Because vacation time is important for a family.
Vacation time's important, but having fun doesn't require you spending money. And I'll give you an example. You could take your son into a ball game and spend $100 to get in, and maybe another $100 to get hot dogs and a drinks and stuff. Whereas the time with you is what's really important. You could go to the state park with a net and catch minnows, and your children will remember that as fondly as the ball game. But you're creating a memory by being, the interpersonal relationship between the two people, not the ball game itself.
And when you're talking to the kids, you don't tell them we can't go to the ball game because we can't afford it. You just tell them more in a positive way. I want to spend time with you in the ball game. We can't spend the time with you.
Yeah,
and we can go home and catch it on tube, and it doesn't cost us anything.
The children are going to remember the time with their parents and their family out there doing stuff themselves and having fun than they are, watching a ball game. That's just a fact. They will remember the fun and the interaction with the family members.
I had a little girl one time, and she'd been staying with us a lot, but she went back to her mother, and her mother had a real difficult life. And the little girl said we was going on a picnic. Well, a picnic to me was going out to Pershing Park, and sitting there. And what they did, they just went down the field outside one of the local housing projects, and they went down there. And I told my wife, well, I thought they was going on a picnic, and she said, in her eyes, they did go on a picnic. It was a wonderful time and a good experience, and turned out to be it's an experience that she'll remember the rest of her life because she was with her mother and daddy, and got to spend the afternoon in the park. It was actually in a field. And it wasn't even set up to have a picnic, but they went down and they had a good picnic because it was quality time, didn't cost them a thing.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. Yep.
Making good decisions. What are some of the, and I may have asked you this earlier, but I want to come back across it, the misconception young people have about money.
The misconception is that 10 cents here, 50 cents there doesn't matter. That small amounts of money are you're just a mean piker if you worry about it, and you're foolish, and the fact is that they're just throwing their future away by spending more than they need to. In fact, where is it? Have you ever heard someone say, gee, that guy's really smart, he spent a lot more for that item than he needed to?
You don't hear that.
That's not exactly intelligence, but we do it unconsciously.
All the time.
All the time.
What a person who is looking, now you do job, you and Pat Wagner out at the Creve Hall Church of Christ at 7 o'clock on a Monday morning. Our program starts there. We've been doing it for over 5 years. And you've gotten a lot of people jobs.
We actually, they get their own job, but we teach them the things that they need to think about, to find a job.
What are we got 5 minutes. What are the misconceptions of people about finding employment?
I think the major thing is that they think the resume is a magic carpet, and that once they have one done well, that it's going to get them a job, when in fact the resume is only the starting point. Your ability to talk about what you can do, and verbalize the resume is really the key thing. So the number one mistake is that people simply don't recognize that getting a job is making a sale. You're selling yourself, and they don't know that they need to prepare themselves for that interaction. It doesn't matter how good you are if you can't express that to people and communicate it well, then no one's going to know how good you are. And so it's an important aspect of it.
Do you train people at y'all's training sessions on how to sell themselves?
We try to. We make them talk. We sit around the table and each one has a chance to talk, and we talk about the importance, and we try to give them the tools and give them an opportunity to express themselves. And we critique, not to embarrass people. We talk about the various critiquing of what to say and what not to say and so forth. So yes, we do.
What's the biggest mistake people make when it comes to going to get a job? What's the number one thing?
They don't know the value that they bring to the table. Before they sit their legs under the interview table, they need to understand what value they bring to the company. And this is especially important if you have any strikes against you. For example, if you're a felon and you just get out of jail and you're looking for a job, you've got to know what the market values, and you've got to know what role you play in that market, and that's what's going to get you a job. Because people want to know, what are you going to do for my company? That's their main focus, and everything else is secondary.
There's people don't want a job, they want a check, and that's a mistake. And
Unfortunately, a lot of people do want to check, and they think of a job as I start at 8 and I go home at 5, but there's a lot of stuff going on in that sandwich of time there that they need to be cognizant of.
the person sitting behind the counter that's going to employ you won't know how his company is going to benefit by having you in that company.
Yes, and what exactly you're going to do, and that you're awake and you know he has customers and they have a budget and they have requirements and they have employee safety and customer safety concerns, and they want the customer satisfied, they want the product to work the first time and so forth. Got to be aware of those things.
We got 2 minutes to go. You people that want to go out and really get a job, they need to really take a good look at themselves and say, why would this company why do they need to hire me? What advantage would
And
they
it comes with I tell them to examine what their profession is or their occupation. I tell them to write it down, practice talking about it. Your performance at the interview is going to get you the job, and getting the interview is going to come from being able to express yourself in front of people in the industry you're targeting or in front of the companies that you want to work for, their vendors, their employees, their associates, expressing the profession that you're good at and your skills and abilities. That's what's going to get you the job.
I was told about a man, and we got to go, but I was told about a man that started a construction company. He's become a great big contractor in Nashville now. It's a huge company. And but when he started out years and years ago, he started paving driveways, and he went to this person's house, and they were getting bids on driveways, and he said, "But I tell you what, I will make you the best driveway that you'll ever have, and anybody do. I'll make the best driveway." But that was his attitude. What I do, it'll be the best. You need to use my company because we are the best. I got 1 minute to go. Tell me something real short that you would like for everybody to know.
I'd like everyone to know when they interview, most people can't wait for it to be over, and they're just sort of, they hope they don't ask a question I don't know the answer to, as opposed to looking at it as an opportunity to talk with people that are their potential peers and in the company and profession that they're going to work in. So it's an attitude issue. Attitude means a lot. Changing your attitude from hoping it's over to enjoying it and talking about your profession.
And selling yourself. And be honest with it. If you don't know the answer, say, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll get it and get back to you.
It's an old Army saying, when in doubt, tell the truth.
That's right. Well, man, I appreciate, Edward, you coming. I hope you'll come back and be
Thank
with us.
you
We
very
got a lot
much.
of things we need to talk about.
Thank you for the work your ministry does. We refer a lot of people here as well.
Thank you. Mamas, I tell you, thanks, folks, for tuning in. We're glad Edward's here. It's at 7 o'clock on Monday morning at the Creve Hall Church of Christ. Go out there, and they'll help you find a job. Thanks.
Troublesome times are here, feeling in touch with fear. Freedom we all hold dear, now is at stake. Humble your heart to God, save from the chasing wrong. Seek the way pilgrims trod, Christians away. My Jesus is coming soon, morning or night or noon. Many will meet their doom. Trumpets will sound, and all of the dead shall rise. Righteous me in the skies. I'm going where no one dies, heavenward bound. Well, troubles will soon be o'er, happy forevermore. When we meet on that shore, free from all care, rising up in the skies, telling this world goodbye.